Hello, my name is Bob Burchett, and I'm going to be your presenter today. So let's face it, folks, you already know 95% of everything ever known about Shirley Temple, right? Well, my job was to find the 5% you may not have known and present it to you for your entertainment. I hope I will succeed today, so please sit back and enjoy. This is Shirley by the Sea 2024. I'm your host, Bob Burchett. I'm the cousin to the famous Bill Burchett. He's the one-time owner of the Shirley Buick, now owned by David and Diane Reedy. Very special car, near and dear to my heart, as it was to Bill, and now to David and Diane Reedy. This story is a different view of Shirley. It's seen through the eyes of the car she was chauffeured in from 1940 onwards, along with some surprising background information. It's sure to make you smile. Some of it's really fascinating. So I'm going to get right into it, and I'm going to narrate this just because I'm not with you there, and I won't be able to actually interact directly with you. But it's my job to make you smile and sometimes gasp like this. Yes, let's start with some bad news. This is the original wanted poster, which happened to be placed around when the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped. And 4 years later, Shirley starts to get into showbiz. The Lindbergh baby kidnapping was gruesome. The baby was kidnapped, ransomed, and murdered. This left a really big chill on all of the celebrities, their children, everybody around them, family and friends. Parents and grandparents. Cute kid, huh? Well, unfortunately, this caused a lot of negativity in the industry. So, what did the Temples do about it? After the Lindbergh kidnapping, Shirley was chauffeured everywhere because the Temples were very concerned. Here's an early picture of her with John, known as Griffith, with her he's her first bodyguard, and they're beside the Fox Studios Cadillac. Griff rarely left her side when he was entrusted with Shirley. Griff carried a revolver under his coat at all times, and he was not afraid to use it, having been a roustabout in an earlier lifestyle. Zanuck said, "If we lose Shirley, Fox is out of business." However, on the opposite end of it, Zanuck, Fox, and Temples all worked constantly to put Shirley's cute face out front everywhere. That only exacerbated the problem because Griff is trying to keep her quiet and keep her under wraps a bit, but that meant some results were good, sometimes it caused problems. So we'll get right into it. This is one of several of these nasty clippings out of the newspaper. Sorry about it being a little grainy, that's the way we got it. So it's an extortion threat. Several of them were attempted, none succeeded. This is a $25,000 extortion threat aimed at Shirley Temple, child film actress. So this guy, Frank, is the guy decided he's going to make himself a few extra bucks. The letter was evidently intended for Shirley's mother, Mrs. George Temple, but it never reached her. It was intercepted in the fan mail by the studio employees, and it was immediately given to the Bureau of Investigation. They promptly picked up this idiot, Frank, who really thought he'd just make himself some free money. Well, that didn't work. The constant barrage of these, however, kept the FBI on alert constantly to take good care of Shirley. Shirley never forgot their careful attention. Here's another one of them. It's a little hard to read. Another one. Farm boy accused of threat letter demanding $25,000 from the child screen star's father. So the Temples are busy keeping the FBI running around, protecting Shirley. Here it says that unless $25,000 is dropped from an airplane near Grant, Nebraska on May 15th, the life of Shirley Temple will be endangered. That didn't work out too well for him either. And you're going to get to read the entire file the FBI built. This is one of the many articles they reported on. You need a little laughter every now and again, and here's one you can laugh at. So J. Edgar Hoover is visiting Shirley in her dressing room. Now, he staked out his 5 bodyguards at the door of this small bungalow. So he walked into Shirley's, and he's not carrying a machine gun, and he wasn't even frowning an FBI frown. So he goes inside, and he meets with Shirley. Shirley Temple is told J. Edgar Hoover he really ought to have brought her a Tommy gun, and that he must wear the gold badge of the Shirley Temple Police, and that he must also sign her autograph book. Hoover in return told Miss Temple that he would send her a machine gun from Washington, something I doubt ever happened, that he liked dogs, and that she is the sweetheart of the G-men. He wrote that in her autograph book. Now, this is what the public got to see when this happened. So, see this little tiny picture down there in a little small column? Chief G-Man, it says, with Shirley. That's all it says there. So the public sees this in the newspaper, half inch on the back page at the bottom. Not very prominent. September 10th, 1937. But Shirley had the original. She signed it and presented it to J. Edgar Hoover herself. It looks like this. So this is the real photograph. To J. Edgar Hoover, Shirley writes, "Love, Shirley Temple." And she presented it to him herself. So this is one of these wonderful photographs. And we have a few more for you. Shirley became well known to the FBI. Here's a group photo with the entire field office. Shirley's in the center, of course, she always is, and Hoover's right there beside her. But this would not be the last time they would come and meet with her. There's her signed picture, says, "Love, Shirley Temple." Back to the car story where I come in. In May of 1940, the Temples wanted out of Fox, and Zanuck especially. So the story is that Temples are driving Zanuck crazy. They want in on the action. They want to tell him how to play Shirley, what she's supposed to say, what she's supposed to sing, how she's supposed to enter and exit, what she's supposed to be doing all the time, driving Zanuck crazy. He's the producer. They're the parents. The parents are supposed to stay out of the way, but Temples were not having any of it. So they're driving each other crazy. So Zanuck's getting tired of Temples. Temples are getting tired of Zanuck, and so they're both planning this for some time. Griff and his wife had been living on the property there where the Temples lived in the bungalow. They were dismissed and moved out of the property. Meanwhile, the Buick had been purchased and was being ready for delivery. The car was special just for them and was ordered custom. The Temples were now out shopping for more pay for Shirley, and guess who they found? So, here's the star of the show, the custom 1940 Buick Series 80. In late 1939, the Temples ordered this car and had it customized. Always concerned for her safety, they had the car. Now they needed a chauffeur, bodyguard for it. You won't have long to wait. But we have to start out by telling you about what Rita had to say. Rita Dubus, star historian for Shirley Temple. She writes, "As far as I know, Griff and Mabel moved out of the Brentwood house when Shirley retired from Fox. That's true." She says, "I don't know if the Temple stayed in contact with them or not. The financial responsibility for Griff had been transferred from Zanuck to the Temples sometime after the CC trip. That means cross country. If I remember correctly, IIRC. Shirley mentioned a bodyguard nicknamed Palm Tree in Child Star when she was at Westlake, but IDK, I don't know if he lived with the Temples or was hired when needed. There's another mystery," Rita writes. Now, this was the cover of the Life magazine, and it's dated July 11th, 1938. They were a little cheaper then, too, 10 cents. There's our cute girl again. So now, They needed a new bodyguard, and they found one. Enter Lewis Palmer as Shirley's new bodyguard chauffeur after the Temples are shopping her out to the studios. Now, I was told that Palmer was suggested to the Temples by the new boss over at NBC, David O. Selznick. Everybody knows him. That's the Gone with the Wind guy. So he helps them get acquainted with Palmer, and he becomes the chauffeur. Palmer was already accomplished at this because he had been used as chauffeur to a lot of the other celebrity kids. Here's a newspaper clipping that I found. I found that, and I got another surprise along with it. This says Shirley Temple's former bodyguard lives in the city. Now, this is a local newspaper, and there's a picture down there. The large one's on the left, the small one in the article is on the right. So here's Shirley and Palmer together. There's Palmer up at the top by himself. So I found at the same time that the other people were looking for it. It turns out that I found a phone number for Frank Palmer, son of Dean Palmer, and then I called them up, and I talked to Frank and his wonderful wife, Evelyn. They were a lot of fun to chat with. Turns out we had both crossed paths searching for the same information. That's where I learned their names and phone numbers. They had put it in there if anybody has any information on Dean Palmer, give them a call. So I did. They told me a lot of the family history, and they sent me 2 photographs. Here's the first one. It's autographed to Dean Palmer. Best wishes, Shirley Temple. There's a lady for you. Now she's growing up. Let's connect some dots for you. This is Lewis, also known as Dean Palmer. He is Palm Tree. Why? It's an old English name from Middle English, Old French too. Palmer, Palmer, and Latin, Palma. One way or the other, all the way around, it's Palm Tree. That explains the use of the Palm Tree nickname. Now for the proof. So, Shirley gives a nice autographed picture of her. Says, to Palm Tree from Shirley. There you are. And Frank and Evelyn have that picture. They gave me a copy of it. This is the second one. They have the only copy of these original photographs. Now you get to see it. So Lewis was 6'2", and being that tall, and the history of the family name being of the palm tree, she always called him that. And here's the signed picture given to him to back it up. Dean was very careful to protect her until around 1945 when she marries Agar. Then Shirley doesn't need the Buick any longer, and it fades away. What a lovely picture, huh? Fast forward here in the late 1960s, Shirley is now making campaign phone calls for then Vice President Richard Nixon, and it helped him to become president. He never forgot that. Here's a clipping. Now, over here at the right, it says, Shirley Temple sees Nixon in spite of the guard. So Shirley Temple, personal friend of the Vice President, Mr. Nixon, left her new NBC studio to pay him a visit. So she came by to see Mr. Nixon. Nixon was in a makeup room at the time, and he's got 2 FBI security officers posted outside, so says the clip. She says, I'd like to see the Vice President. The protector outside from the FBI says, you have to be a member of the FBI to get in there now. She says, that's okay. My brother is an FBI agent. And the guy shoots back at her, but you're not. So he's not going to let Shirley in. But by this time, Nixon's inside and hearing all the ruckus going on outside, steps out of his makeup room and says, hi there, Shirley, come on in. So at his personal invitation, Shirley gets to see him in spite of the guard. Now, Nixon really loved Shirley. When it was his turn to reciprocate, she helped him become president. He initiated an appointment to her being a delegate to the United Nations, and that suggestion was made by Dr. Henry Kissinger. What you're going to see next is not for the faint of heart. The FBI, in these instances, are tasked with taking apart whoever there's the new nominee. And they're now out for Shirley Temple Black from birth to the day of Nixon proposing to appoint her. And the next slide is the result of that work. Here it is. This is the top secret classified document. It was dated August 18th, 1969. Now that was at the end of the time frame when it was being created. The investigative period in the upper right says 8/12 to 8/18 of 1969. That's only 6 days. And in that 6 days, this entire FBI top secret dossier was created. The office of the origin was the Bureau, the main Federal Bureau of Investigation. And the reporting office here was Los Angeles. The character of the case is a special inquiry. The title of the case is named every name that Shirley ever had. Shirley Temple Black, a.k.a. Shirley Temple, Jane Temple Black, Mrs. Charles A. Black, Mrs. Charles Alden Black, Mrs. John Agar. They've got every bit of it, every scrap of information. Now, these are all sent from Bureau to the field office and from the field offices back to the Bureau via teletype. A teletype is a very reliable and private network created for the FBI. So we used to refer to this term as the wire. So to this day, if you do a wire transfer from your bank, it's also referred to, even though there's no wire these days, it's referred to as a wire transfer or TT or teletype, even though none of those are being used any longer, of course. But we still call it that. So the Bureau teletype goes to Washington, the Los Angeles teletype to the Bureau, San Francisco teletype to the Bureau, Sacramento teletype to the Bureau, and the Los Angeles teletypes to the Bureau and New York. They're all dated in the middle of this time frame. What's important about this is Hoover's got people all over running around in circles, bumping into each other to investigate Shirley. Up at the upper left-hand corner, by now you're wondering, why do I have this document? Yes, I've got friends, but this document can be seen by everyone now. You don't need a top secret clearance any longer. It was started in 1969, and it was declassified on February the 28th, 2015. So now it's a declassified document. It is, however, still partially redacted. So you'll notice that there's a blank square that says report made by, and it's redacted. And so it begins. Shirley is completely unaware that the FBI is sifting through her entire life. So let's put you in her place. So you want to be a political appointee. Well, you might want to think again. Nixon is simply repaying a debt of gratitude to Shirley for her tireless campaign work. Well, that's okay, but when you read this dossier built up on the entire Temple family and everyone that ever interacted with Shirley, they are all being ruthlessly questioned. They use their own terminology, one of which is an acronym BUDED, stands for Bureau Deadlines. So, notice at the upper right of the clip, it says received by coded teletype. Now these wire transmissions are very private, hard to eavesdrop on and tap into. This would be where you get the term wiretapping, but there wasn't any of that able. Then, however, if the wire had been tapped by some method, this is a coded teletype signal. It says, urgent, 8/12 of 69, to the Washington Field, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Reference to Shirley Temple Black and all of her other names. Here's what it's all about. The State Department has requested expedite investigation of Mrs. Black, who is being considered for presidential appointment. Note that the position is not stated. She is the former child movie star, Shirley Temple. Tells her birth date, where she's living in Woodside, and since 3.5 years of age, she's been making motion pictures. If you want to know more, go see Who's Who for further background data, it says. Now, here's a statement and a command to the FBI agents. You will conduct no neighborhood investigations concerning Ms. Black unless some reason for doing so arises, at which time the Bureau approval should be secured. What they did not want was her neighborhood in Woodside being swarmed all over by FBI agents knocking on everybody's door. If you've ever been involved in one of these investigations, and I am familiar with them, they go through everything. They call every neighbor, they go up and meet them, they visit each one individually and take their statements. They leave no turn unstoned. Down at the bottom, you'll see the first of several of these individual sheets in the dossier that are time-stamped, serialized, and sealed. So each page is still part of the top secret document. Here, I'm cherry-picking out a very few of these pages. This one caught my eye. It says, look at line number 9-2077 asterisk, and you read the word non-derog, meaning non-derogatory. It's not, in other words, it's not derogatory against the appointee, Shirley. So it's followed by the words victim in extortion case. So the FBI is going through these myriad of extortion cases, writing everything down. Every fact ever determined about Shirley is either derogatory or non-derogatory. So that's why it says that. This document that I'm pouring through is 211 pages of files created in only 6 days just to determine if Shirley was qualified to be an appointee to a high government position. But in many cases, she was just getting started. Here's one of the interesting ones I picked out to show you. Here we're talking about Ned Hutchison, appointment secretary to then California Governor Ronald Reagan, who advised that appointee Shirley and her husband, Charles, have been personal friends of his for several years and has visited their home on a few occasions. Hutchison was a member of Governor Reagan's Businessmen's Task Force in 1967 with Charles Black and was closely associated with appointee Shirley in her 1967 congressional campaign. He described the appointee Shirley as capable, conscientious, loyal citizen who would handle a high-level government position in a commendable fashion. Now, notice it's serialized, stamped, signed, dated. Well, you can't lead a public life without making a few enemies, so even Shirley Temple had a few. So, as we go through this might be one of the reasons in here why Shirley divorced Agar and reverted back to Temple. Reading right along. Fellow business associates and acquaintances of Shirley's comment favorably, and they recommend appointee Shirley, except for one Bill Asher in capitals. Screen Gems Productions, who was associated with appointee Shirley in producing the, quote, Shirley Temple Storybook Show, he feels that she is, quote, far right politically. Now, that's an interesting statement. Appointee's ex-husband, John Agar, says he would hesitate to recommend appointee. You'll love this part. The reason he says that is she tended to overreact if she did not get her way. Well, fancy that. Here's this child star who's had it pretty much everything her way from her birth to 1968 or 9. So Shirley's kind of a spoiled child from his perspective, and she tended to overreact if she did not get her way. Amazing. The FBI goes on to say that part of their duties here was to do credit records, and favorable credit record was located concerning the appointee Shirley's brothers and their wives, so they really dig in. However, a credit record concerning appointee's ex-husband Agar reveals one repossession arrest record concerning appointee's ex-husband under CII number 596710, FBI number 833, and set forth. So, Agar's not such a swell dude, huh? Guess what? He's no angel. The FBI combs through all of his rap sheet, and they put it all in this document. Let's see here, folks. It starts out on February 12th of 1950, and from that point in time, a year later to January 30th of 1953, so here's Agar. He is arrested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different times for drunk driving. And what we're doing here is we are looking at the entire arrest record going through with a 502 vehicle code violations, and he is jailed at long last. He escaped jail several times, released on bail and probation and all of that. But he did do some jail time for this. So if your name was Shirley Temple and would you marry this guy if you knew that this is the way it was headed? I don't think so. So Shirley's finally had enough of Agar. Here's the divorce record they found and recapped on August 13, 1969. You folks all probably know this. The files of the Superior Court, Los Angeles County, Los Angeles, California. These files were caused to be reviewed by Special Agent Redacted. These files disclosed under this docket number a complaint for divorce was filed by Shirley Temple Agar, plaintiff, against John George Agar. He's the defendant. She's just charging extreme cruelty. The complaint indicated they were married in Los Angeles and separated October 12, 1949. One child was born of this marriage, name redacted, age redacted. Now here's where it gets interesting. The interlocutory judgment of divorce was granted on December 5, 1949. Final judgment of divorce was granted December 7, 1950. And here's where the plaintiff's maiden name was ordered restored to her. So now she reverts back to Shirley Temple. So now she's a political novice, maybe so, but she was biased. Working with presidents, maybe why. More of their information is here. This fellow stated that this series originated at the NBC studio in Burbank in approximately 1958. Henry Jaffe started this series, but it was later taken over by him, Asher. He said Jaffe was mostly associated with the business rather than the creative end. Now, Asher's name appears several places. Asher advised that he had very limited social contact with appointee Shirley. He considered her to be the epitome of propriety, and he said in his opinion, the appointee was extremely proper and very far right politically. There's that mentioning again. He stated that because he felt that because of these two traits, she tends to be set up to ridicule by some of the comedians of the era. Not sure what importance that is, but that's his concern. Asher advised that the appointee is a loyal American citizen, and he never had any reason to question her character, associates, or reputation. But, however, he would hesitate to recommend her for a, quote, high-level government appointment unless he knew specifically what position she was under consideration for. Well, that coercion will not work with the FBI. Remember, early on, it was clearly stated that the position was not to be revealed. So the FBI either says, I don't know, or I'm not allowed to tell you. Here's an interesting item I found in this big dossier. The day J. Edgar Hoover gave Shirley Temple a tear gas pen. Unfortunately, there's no photo or documentation about that, but when Temple was about 20 years old, Hoover decided to give her a gift that could protect her if necessary, this article says. On January 20th, 1949, he gifted her a fountain pen with a secret. It would emit tear gas if anyone decided to try and harm her again. A few years later, when Temple was dating, you're going to love this one, she's dating Charles Alden Black. She called in a favor. She asked Hoover to run a thorough background check on her potential husband-to-be. Apparently he came back clean because the two were wed on December 26, 1950. This was her second marriage. The two stayed together till his death in 2005. Good choice on her part. But she definitely dropped a dime on the phone and let J. Edgar Hoover know, hey, pal, have a look at this dude that I'm considering marrying. A lot of horsepower there. Governor Ronald Reagan knew Shirley very well. This fellow said Reagan advised that he had known the appointee for at least 25 years, both professionally, in moving pictures, and officially, since he became governor of the state of California. Governor Reagan further advised, redacted name, that he appointed Shirley Temple Black to the California Hospital Advisory Commission in Sacramento, California, in which position she did a wonderful job. Governor Reagan further advised that the above appointment was indicative of his trust and confidence in the appointee's ability. Governor Reagan feels that the appointee has unquestionable loyalty to the United States government. Her morals are above reproach. So, he also added the appointee's associates were all persons of outstanding character and reputation. So, they directly interviewed Governor Ronald Reagan. Now, here's where all this information came from that is recapped in here in these clippings. Now, can you imagine some poor special agent or agents of the FBI, these are the special agents, SA, spending their entire life in the Los Angeles Times library learning the Dewey Decimal System and digging up articles on Shirley to compile this monstrous dirt list. Each one is compiled in this 211-page document. These clippings sprinkle the text and talk today to show her wide and varied career, and the FBI did all the work for me. I didn't have to do a thing. So all I had to do was find this wonderful dossier. So on August 13, 1969, the library was caused to be reviewed by Special Agent, redacted. The following articles were noted concerning the appointee. Tiny star aided by the court. Father seeks more pay. Shirley Temple pay scale is set. Shirley Temple sued by her agents. Quarrel over Shirley Temple contract is ended. Title for Shirley Temple dated this date is exhibit. Shirley Temple dolls lead to the court action. Interesting. One good one here says Shirley Temple heads the list at $5,000 pay a week. Her closest rival was under that. It was Clark Gable. Now, Shirley's dolls were not exempt from the limelight. Here's an interesting one for you. The agent for the Temples is in a court action to ensure that he is the one representing the family in making the dolls and marketing them. So Shirley's only 7 years old, and already the legal battles have started. So, thanks to the tireless work of the FBI, we have a detailed record of Shirley from 1930 through 1969. Basically, it says, an application for nominal guardianship for Shirley Temple, child film star, was set today in Queens Supreme Court by one Sidney Rosenau. Rosenau's application was explained as a preliminary step enabling a suit against a company which is said to be manufacturing Shirley Temple dolls, assertedly infringing on an exclusive contract between Shirley, her parents, and a Long Island doll manufacturer. So you might want to check. Everybody in here owns a doll, or 2, or 3, or 10. And you might find out when those were made and by whom. If you can determine the doll manufacturer, you might have an interesting gold mine prize if you determine that that doll happens to have been made by one of the found to be patent infringing companies that Rosenau is suing. Very interesting. A lot of background dirt in this. Back to J. Edgar Hoover, who never lost his affection for Shirley. He followed her career till the end of his storied reign at the FBI. They remained fast friends, and she had only to call. He would always answer. He writes her this really nice letter. Dear Shirley, I was pleased to learn that you have been awarded the Sarah Coventry Woman of the Year Trophy for public service. I want to extend my heartiest congratulations to you. This honor is indeed an expression of the respect and esteem you enjoy, and your friends in the FBI Join me in wishing you continued success. Signed, sincerely, J. Edgar Hoover. Marked personal, December 10th, 1969. To wind up this story, here is the Buick. This car was purchased by Tom Barrett of the Barrett-Jackson Auction Company, at that time the largest in the world. Now, it was first sold publicly at this auction January 19, 1984. No one seems to know where the car was for 40 years, but Shirley later on was living in Woodside. The car was around 10 or 12 miles away. Shirley was reunited with her car, and she stated to the then current owners, "That was my car. I sat here. I loved this car." So, yeah, that dispels any rumors to the effect that this car perhaps wasn't the real original Shirley Temple Buick. There have been rumors to that effect. None are true. Shirley said so. So here it is being sold, this first recorded time, and look at the good company this car is left in. At the bottom right, there's the 1940 Buick Series 80 Bowman and Schwartz car, customized car, built for Shirley Temple, it says. Right above it is Benito Mussolini's parade car. At the bottom left is the 1932 Lincoln V12 that was President Roosevelt's campaign car, and in the middle is the 1927 Mercedes-Benz S, and this one was owned by the Vanderbilts. So it's in good company. No one needs to explain the wonderful license plate that's almost lollipop. This is shown as a picture in 2003 when I first saw the car on the grass at the display fields. And there it is in all its glory and splendor, and this is a good shot of the license plate. So, at the end of the story comes around to Shirley rode around in a 1940 Buick when she was a child, in the 12 and 13 age bracket, and that might have caused her to love this 1940 era of cars. So when her chance came, this is what she bought. A 1940 Ford Coupe, also known as a coupe properly, but nobody seems to know where it went. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to a close today. I hope you've enjoyed the story, the backstory of Shirley Temple. So I will close out the recording now.